Hello everyone, welcome back to the Untitled Marvel Project. I am your host, Tanner Dykstra. I'm joined by my co-host, Tucker Hazel. We are talking about the Marvel movie to end all Marvel movies. We don't know if there'll be another one after this. We don't know
No.
if there's going to be another movie after this. If you didn't pick up on it already, it is, of course, Marvel's The Eternals, okay?
Drop like literally the movie is just called Eternals, like legally.
Oh, actually, okay.
Yes.
Marvel's Eternals.
Yes.
We're going to talk about that movie, the movie that lives in infamy, the lowest rated MCU film on Rotten Tomatoes, whatever that's worth to you. But before we get into that, we have to do the typical YouTube stuff. Subscribe to Backlog Banter. Hello again. Hello to all of our new fans who got us over
Yes,
500
hello.
subscribers. We hope you're watching this video. Thank you very much. We love and appreciate each and every one of you. But ring a ding ding dong that bell so you can get alerted for all the new videos that get uploaded to Backlog Banter. And if you have not already, click the link in the description to join our Discord server to talk to us more about anything, in particular the Eternals. Because Tucker, we have some thoughts on this particular film.
Believe it or not, this film to end all films, the death of cinema as it has been touted,
Yes.
mostly by me, actually. I feel like I kind of played this joke up in my own head.
You've been the perpetrator of this joke, mostly.
Yeah, but I mean, this film has lived in infamy, as you said, before it even released, before most people had even seen it. The Rotten Tomatoes the reviews were all over the place, mostly negative, coming from different sources. It's unclear what was actually happening, but this is not the worst MCU movie.
It is not.
I don't know what the fuck they were. The Rotten Tomatoes reviewers are smoking, because this is not the best MCU movie.
No,
nowhere near. But I'm very happy to say that I at least enjoyed it, and I do think it's very interesting, and I'm very excited to rewatch it and get more of it, get more from it going into the future.
Eternals is flawed, but it's pretty good on the whole. I was thinking about this. I think it's a little unfortunate that so far in 2020, we've gotten 3 MCU films now, and they're all pretty.
As of today, as of about 4 hours ago.
Yeah, they're all pretty middling. But
Phase 4, start with a bang.
Starting with a bit of a fizzle to start off with, but. Yeah, I mean, I thought there are some good things in Eternals, which we'll get to. It is different. A lot of people saying that the Eternals is different. They are correct. And I'd like to talk about how it's different in a lot of ways. But Tucker, let's kick it off. Let's be positive about it, first of all. What did you like about Eternals? Not the Eternals.
You're stressing the tongue against the lips to say a the, but you held yourself back, and I very much appreciate that.
Hit me with the positives.
The positives, it's hard to know where to start with this movie, because I think what this movie does, that it's kind of just the broadest strokes of why this movie, I think, works and fails on both sides, is it tries a lot of stuff. This movie is introducing basically all new everything. It is related to the MCU. It is a history of the MCU, but the things that we're familiar with in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with that Infinity Saga are only tangentially related. They are mentioned a handful of times, and this movie does a lot of setup for larger scale things that will likely play into future projects. It's hard to tell at this moment, but this movie, I think, works because it does set its own tone. It sets its own corner of the universe. It sets its own rules and scale and intimacy and story and characters. But it's also doing so much of that sometimes it doesn't know where to put its own focus.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. If we're starting off with the positives, I think that for the most part, all the actors work in this. Our main players, Jemmachon is, a bit basic as far as Marvel protagonists go, but she's not bad by any stretch.
No, I liked her a lot more as it went on. I do think that she's a pretty interesting character, and she has the most relationships with the entire cast.
Richard Madden is a bit hit or miss, but we'll get to him in enough time. But all the rest of the supporting actors for the Eternals cast are pretty good.
Yeah, they range from pretty good to very good.
Yes. I think that, people can make fun of this movie for, having Chloe Zhao on it. So, it's going to have, cinematography, and it's the first time that Marvel fans have seen cinematography before. But honestly, it looks good.
It looks very good. I do think
Yes.
that there is a lot more style and
Hmm.
visual creativity to this film than almost any other Marvel movie. I mean,
Yeah.
you'll get a handful of big scale, awesome CGI shots in a few of them, or a few, shots of an Iron Man or a Hulk or something like posing against light or whatever.
Hmm.
But those are like the ones that are designed to be cool. But Chloe Zhao has a style of environmental cinematography and placing things in real environments and setting up these intricate scenes in the background that for the vast majority of the film it looks very visually pleasing. It's a lot more visually creative than your average Marvel movie, and people are going to give this movie shit for that, for it being better cinematography for the MCU,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
it's
listen.
better. It's good cinematography.
Yeah,
Chloe
yeah.
Zhao knows what she's doing.
People are. But here's my prediction. The movie came out today.
Mm-hmm.
Premiere happened today. Here's my prediction. People are going to make fun of this for having basic cinematography while also making fun of the rest of MCU movies for having bad cinematography.
Yeah.
Like, you can do both, but you should sort of address the degree of difference that is there.
Yes.
But regardless, that I assume that's what's going to happen. Uh Otherwise, those are like my main positives is that the parts of it that are good are just kind of pretty good. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? The parts of it that are bad, however, and
Well,
I don't want to.
hold on.
I don't want to rush into this. I don't want to
There's
rush
other
into
things to
this.
talk about. I mean,
Okay,
we've
sure.
we've got so much things to discuss with this film. I think it's important to spend a little more time on each thing rather than firing through them.
Sure,
But
sure, sure, sure.
one thing that I do think worked a lot better than I was expected to is the action choreography. I think the
Yeah,
action is really good in this movie. I mean,
I
you've
agree.
got a wide cast of characters with very varying powers, and they place them into different situations, which makes sense for the characters. And almost all of them, I think, I felt
Hmm.
like they were utilizing their powers in creative ways. There was a real like physicality to a lot of what they
Yeah.
were doing. Gilgamesh in particular, his fucking punching of the ground and like slamming the trees
Hmm.
and shit. Like there's such a
There's
weight to his moves.
that one action scene that takes place in South America. By the way, full spoilers for this
Yes,
review.
100%.
Absolutely. Where he's fighting one of the deviants, the main deviant, Bill Skarsgård deviant, before it becomes Bill Skarsgård, and he breaks its
Yes.
jaw and it like
Mm-hmm.
heals itself. But like, yeah, there's a good sense of physicality to the action sequences that maybe were lacking in even some of this year's previous MCU films.
Sure, yeah.
Um,
Not to name any names.
Not to name any names, but
I mean, to go off of what I was saying more
mhm,
specifically, I thought that Kingo's powers worked way better than I thought they would. I mean, he's using his finger guns and doing his Hadoukens and stuff, but
yeah,
like he's firing them off quick and doing a lot of
mhm,
really cool shit with that. And I thought that worked way better than I was expecting. Fastos in combat worked
yeah.
way cooler than I
Oh,
thought.
absolutely. He's
His
got
power,
gadgets. Yeah.
yeah, his gadgets in that final action sequence are ridiculous because they can do anything. But the ways that he does utilize them
Hmm.
are very visually creative. And he's got his gauntlets on, he's firing these things, and he's making like wires to connect things.
Hmm.
It's a really different kind of power set than we've seen before, but
Hmm.
I thought it worked well.
Makari is a great one that I want to shout out.
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
The MCU's first speedster. It's crazy that it took us this long to get
Yeah.
here, but I'm glad that she's here. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Again, great physicality in that fight sequence when, again, spoilers, they're fighting against Icarus, and
Mm-hmm.
she is just, she's doing the classic like Flash thing of like just hitting him from all angles and
Yeah.
at high speeds and hitting him into that sort of cliff face so hard that lava starts coming out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
She also
then
does like these sort of leap
yes.
runs where she's like bounding over landscapes and the background's going and like
Hmm.
it's some of my favorite speedster action we've ever seen on film.
Hmm.
It's not as fun as the Quicksilver stuff in the best X-Men movies, but in terms of action choreography and not like whatever the fuck, those are entirely
Yeah, yeah.
separated.
It's fun
It's
little
it's some of the
break
best we've
moments,
seen.
yeah.
Yes.
Let's see. What else? What else? What else? Um
Thena? I
Thena
thought
Thena
I
was
thought Thena
good.
was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, she got some solid choreography there.
Icarus
Cersei,
was fine.
yeah.
Icarus, I think could have had more like weight and stuff to him, but he's just firing lasers and floating. Like
Yeah.
it works.
Cersei herself, she gets some good moments, use of her powers, changing matter like that the one scene that we saw on the bus where she turns it into rose petals or whatever.
Oh yeah,
and of
that's
course,
very cool.
I really do like the imagery of her when she's fighting again in that South American action sequence when she's fighting the deviant and she turns it into like a tree. It's just like a cool thing, a cool moment of imagery that they incorporated into the film.
She also uses her powers for combat in that sequence when she turns part of a tree into water and then the rest of the tree into metal, so it falls down and crushes the deviant. That's really creative.
That's
I
cool.
like that.
Yeah. Are we missing
one small thing? Because the other Eternals are more like supporting, which I think is cool that there's sort of two different styles of Eternals, which is the attack ones and the sort of support ones. There's the tanks, the support, and the DPS. But I thought that Druig had, he's not an action guy, but Barry Keoghan did, well, probably wasn't him, but like, Druig as a character did this one really cool thing in, again, that South America battle where he like sort of jumps over a deviant and does this slide, shoots it in the bottom of the thing with a shotgun. That was pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. But yeah, well, we talked about the action of all the Eternals. Let's talk about the Eternals themselves. Let's talk about the character a little bit because I did praise some of their performances up top. So let's maybe start at the top and work our way down. Let's start with our main leads. We got Jemmachon and Richard Madden. What did you think about either of their performances, Tucker? Take your pick.
Good God, do you need to drink some water? Do you need to get scared by a ghost or some shit?
Yeah.
Jemmachon, I think I was not sold on at the beginning, though I do think that her chemistry and relationship with Kit Harrington, Dane Whitman, was actually one of the best, chemistries in the film. I thought their relationship actually worked pretty well. But she really grew on me throughout the course of the film. I think that the sort of twists that she's introduced to in the ways that that impacts her character and how she's sort of having that internal conflict actually works pretty well. Her having the role of Prime Eternal thrust upon her and the death of one of her friends, she portrays that really well, and she's our eyes through all of this. And having her in these situations where all this crazy stuff going on and she has to just scramble to keep everyone calm and use her powers where she can, because she's not offensive with her powers,
right?
But she's able to put up a fight and use her powers in clever ways that I think that by the end, I was like, yeah, I really like Cersei. I think she's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, it is really interesting that she becomes the Prime Eternal after Ajax dies. Because spoilers again. Because she isn't the most powerful Eternal or whatever. And I think that really puts an interesting weight on the shoulders of a character who, if they were not the Prime Eternal, would probably fade into the background a little bit.
Yes, sure.
Icarus, Richard Madden. First of all, Scottish accent's coming a little bit thick there, Richard Madden. I get whenever he says the emergence or we have to save the earth.
Yeah, no, it didn't get to me as much as it apparently did to you, but it's noticeable, and I think there's some other ones that we'll get to as well where that's true. But he's, I think, the one on the cast that I'm the most conflicted about. Everyone else, I have a pretty clear cut yes or no to if I like their performance or not, but he's fine. I mean, he's got that ruggedness and visual sort of handsomeness that fits the role of this sort of godly character. And I believe him visually as this powerful guy that everyone sort of looks up to, but his performance is not particularly charismatic. He's pretty flat throughout, and is even in those emotional moments, he's not selling it. So actually, you know what? I say I'm mixed on him, but I think it's certainly more negative for him personally.
It didn't do a lot for me either, and I'm going to use this opportunity to complain about Icarus a little bit.
Okay.
This is more of a character writing thing as well, and it's indicative of an issue I have with the film overall, is that they sort of take the lamest possible route with some of the most interesting character moments or ideas in the film, like with Icarus. So Icarus, spoilers again, he is the surprise twist villain of this story. He's the one who kills Ajax. He is serving what's the main Celestial's name? Arishem. He's the one that's like, we have to serve Arishem's vision. We have to allow Earth to be destroyed in order to create another planet. And the rest of the Eternals like, no, that's not cool, Icarus. And that's sort of the conflict throughout the film, and it's really interesting because, like, he's, like, the most powerful one, and Kingo backs out because he says, listen, man, you guys don't have a chance. I'm just gonna chill. I'm kind of on his side, but I'm just staying neutral. I'm backing out. So, and then, so this third act, we have Icarus, him and Sprite team up. We'll get to that. But at the end, Cersei freezes the Eternal, the Celestial that comes out of the ocean, and he kind of stares at her, and we get a montage of the romantic moments that they've shared throughout the film.
Yeah.
And he just goes, oh man, I am sad. The power of love. I'll just leave, I guess.
Yeah. It didn't make a lot of sense.
Richard Madden doesn't quite sell it, and the writing certainly is, again, lame and like a cop-out for addressing what Icarus will do now, him reconciling that, just paving over any possible conflict or conversation that they could have about the morals of this whole thing.
Yeah.
And he flies into the sun. And that is the end of Icarus in this movie.
I do think that it comes down to the specific dialogue writing in those sequences and him not selling that performance. Because I do think that conceptually, and the role that he plays in the story-wise, Icarus is a pretty interesting character. I mean, the conflict is there through the morals, which I think is one of the most interesting parts of this movie. I think that him ostensibly being the villain is a great part about this movie that I didn't see necessarily coming.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll get to Crow, but whatever.
Mhm.
But the writing in those sequences where he is supposed to be emotional and his performance do not sell the weight of what's happening. And
Sure.
I think it also a side effect of the editing and how much stuff they have to keep showing, make sure you're up to date with all these scenarios going on at the same time. But no, you're certainly right. I just think that's the biggest issue.
Yeah. Okay, Tucker, who would you like to talk about next? And any character that you feel drawn to particularly?
I think Thena is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I think that Thena and Gilgamesh have one of the most interesting bonds and roles within the story. The way that she is facing this madness from her brain not being reset. There's some fucking eternal sci-fi bullshit reason, but like
they've lived so long, and some of their brains start fracturing under all the memories that they have, and they go. I forget what they call it, like way madness or something like that.
Some fucking name. I really want to watch this movie with subtitles so I can understand some of this shit better. But I think that Thena and Gilgamesh have a really interesting bond. I mean, the way that the two of them have spent millennia together, and just exist to sort of keep each other grounded and have that bond external to romance. It's something even deeper, and I think that's really interesting, and I wish that had been played into more. Unfortunately for their bond, but I think fortunately for the stakes of this movie, Gilgamesh gets killed about halfway or a little more halfway through. And that's one of the more interesting aspects of this movie, is killing off a good portion of the main characters, and that's a moment that I wish had been given more weight. But the connection between the two of them, the roles they fill in the story, and the actors, both of those actors, I think they were great. Their action is cool, and the way they interact with the rest of the cast, I think, was awesome. Both of them.
Yeah, I have no issues with Angelina Jolie or Don Lee in this.
Yes.
I want to talk about Druig, Tucker.
Okay.
Because this is another avenue for me to complain about a lame thing they did with a character in this. Barry Keoghan, first of all, very good. Good actor. Good actor, yes. Barry Keoghan is. Everyone thought that he was going to be secret villain. He has the villainous mind control powers. As Tucker explained to me, Druig is more of an antagonist in the Eternals comics. And yet,
definitely,
he's sort of like the reason that the Eternals break up in the first place at in Tenochtitlan. And they sort of play with it, and I think there's a version of the script where he is more antagonistic, but he just like becomes a part of the team, no conflict whatsoever, really. eventually. And I'm glad that Barry Keoghan isn't getting typecast as like a backstabbing villain character. I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad that he's gonna get to have fun with the rest of the Eternals in the sequel. Spoilers:
Mm-hmm.
there's gonna be a sequel, and he's gonna be
Mm-hmm.
in it probably. But the thing of Druig being able to control minds, and him and Fastos sort of had this back and forth thing where he says, I can control humans' minds. I can end wars, and literally everyone can be happy. There doesn't have to be any conflict, any discourse among the humans. I can just make them all get along and be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And the sort of way that conflicts with the Eternals' mission of like not interfering, we have to let the humans do what they do, which
Mm-hmm.
we eventually learn is just so they advance and evolve and and populate more.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really interesting like back and forth. That's not only like that thing, the not creating conflict and creating conflict,
Mm-hmm.
but also the thing of like, is it right to like control people so they don't so they lose that freedom, but it's better off for them in the long run. It's a
Yeah.
really interesting moral argument that this movie does not address at all. They're just like that thing about Druig's character. He's like, oh yeah, I like thought about it off screen and I'm fine with it now. Completely paved it over and is really disappointing to me.
I, I I agree with most of what you said. I do think that conceptually that conflict is certainly present.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that you're not necessarily giving the resolution to that moment of the character enough credit, because I do think that there is a better explanation than you're letting on. I think the idea of him coming to terms with that conflict, internal conflict that he's had for millennia, in service of the possible future of the entire planet, like putting aside his internal conflict because he's the one who can save them. He's the one with his ability that he has, that mind control that he's been hesitant to use because of how Ajak and Icarus sort of told him yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
He puts that aside because he can be the essentially the core of the team. We think for
Mm-hmm.
a large portion of the film. So I do think there is a resolution there, and I think all of this comes down to something that this movie does have a problem with, which is they are throwing so much information at you. They are throwing so much character history and moments that are important, but they're happening so quickly it's hard to keep up. I
Mm-hmm.
do think that there's a likelihood that on a rewatch you'll be able to pick up that conflict a little better and understand its resolution and how it feeds into his character going into the end of the film, because I do think it's present, because I did not get the drop like what you were receiving from that. I don't think that's entirely there.
I think that here's where I'll explain where the drop happened. Okay, so they show up to his like weird cult convent thing
Yeah.
where he is presumably controlling these people to some extent to like
Mm-hmm.
stay there, and he explains it's to like save a group of humans from the rest of the planet as they're destroying it. He hand waves to climate change or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, I could save all of them, and then he has that weird monologue where and everyone says, man, that guy's an asshole or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
then like the next scene where he shows up, he's like, I did some thinking in my hundreds of years alone, and like
Mm-hmm.
it is bad for me to control all people.
Mm-hmm.
Like they drop it completely, even because that is that appears to be what his motivation still is when they show up to him again in that convent thing. But for servicing the story, they sort of like make him a bit more. They drop it so he can get along with the rest of the team better and they can move forward.
Sure.
But regardless, Tucker, do you want to talk about Fastos?
Sure.
I like Brian Tyree Henry. Very good in this.
Yes.
People
Definitely.
were memeing on the thing of like, oh, the first gay black character in the MCU caused Hiroshima or whatever. But like,
That's
think
an exaggeration.
it's an
guys.
exaggeration, first of all, and it is like they incorporate that into a character conflict for him. He's like,
Yes.
man, humans are terrible. I feel responsible for this. I gave them the advancement in technology, and look what they did with it.
Mm-hmm.
And he sort of backs away and insulates himself. Again, a little thing of like, I hate humanity. They're terrible. except for this family that I have. That development again happens off screen, but that's a little more acceptable in my mind because he's insulating himself with a small group of people that he actually cares about.
No, I think that he's one of the better actors in this
Mm-hmm.
film. I think Fastos plays a really interesting role in the progression of the film and in him being honestly a lot more human and relatable than most of them the characters. Icarus is stone faced and a godly guy.
Mm-hmm.
Cersei has these abilities to sort of distance her from the rest of humanity. Of course, Sprite and Athena and Gilgamesh, they all have these sort of distances from people. But
Mm-hmm.
Fastos has put all that aside. He says he's not using his powers and has relegated himself to just being with humanity and in trying to enjoy and see the good in what people can do. And I think that he sells that really well. I think
Mm-hmm.
his connection to both his husband and his son are great. I think his son is a great actor. I can't wait to see him in future stuff. He's really funny whenever he's on screen, which is not very often. But
Yeah.
and also as he reintegrates himself into the Eternals and has to sort of learn to deal with this crazy bullshit and using his powers again, he does a great job with that. The conflict that
Yeah.
he has with Icarus on the Domo as Icarus is leaving is one of the best moments of acting in the
Yeah.
film as he's yelling at Icarus and they're having that fight. Brian Tyree Henry definitely kills it. I thought he was awesome.
Yeah. What's the actress for Sprite name? Is it Leah McCune?
Leah McHugh.
Leah McCune. Not very good. She's
No.
I don't know how old she is, but child actress, sure. There's good ones, there's bad ones. Sometimes you have to be a little more lenient, but they give her that guys, I promise she's like a million years old. It's fine that she has a romance with Icarus or whatever. But they give her like adult lines, and she has an comparable level of drama to the rest of the Eternals, and she just can't deliver that.
Yeah.
Probably because she is a child actor. So, yeah. What do you think? I don't know.
So is not a great transition to handing it off to someone else.
Hey,
No,
Tucker,
but
take it.
but I thought she was bad. I really think she's actually one of the weakest parts of this movie because she doesn't have the ability as an actress, whether that's from experience or just lack of acting ability, to sell the conflict that I think is really interesting in Sprite. The fact that she is, the same age as all of them. They were presumably all made at the same time. Like they have the same amount of history, but she is stuck as a child. And that means that everyone else doesn't take her as seriously. And I do think there's a really interesting character conflict there. And the way that does play into, the greater team composition of the Eternals is interesting, but she doesn't sell it. Her lines are really stiff. You always feel like she's looking off camera at someone giving her direction to sort of get things done. And her banter with the other Eternals doesn't work. Like, oh, there's definitely a disconnect here in terms of, acting prowess. And also because a lot of they had to support her lack of ability with a lot of, she's a child and people don't take her seriously. She's in love with Icarus. Like they kept having to like sort of spoon feed us this information because it wasn't being sold by the actress. And I think that's really unfortunate because Sprite's an interesting character. Will we get more of her? I kind of doubt it now that she's become a human by the end of the film, and she presumably no longer has her abilities.
We'll see. We shall see.
The character's conflict is gone now because she has had that resolve, which I guess is an interesting, way to conclude that character's arc. But she's probably just gone.
Yeah, her conflict has been resolved by the fact that she is a human and Icarus is in the sun now. So there's that. What else do we have? Oh, Kingo and Makari. I want to talk about Kingo and Makari.
Those are the other ones.
Who do you want to take first? Kingo Makari. Kingo Makari. Kingo Makari.
Let's end with Kingo.
Okay. What is the actress's name for Makari?
Lauren Ridloff. She was in Sound of Metal.
That's right. She was. She was great in that and great here.
Yeah, she's very good here.
Oh, we talked about Makari's action choreography already, but in those human, in those conversation moments, also very good. She has, she's using ASL, but she keeps up with the banter of the rest of the Eternals. Was actually way more invested in the her and Druig romance than I was in the Cersei Icarus
Yeah,
romance.
100%.
So there's that.
I feel like that's going to be a huge takeaway that a lot of people get from this. Like, hey, we wanted more Makari and Druig.
Yeah,
Get the fuck
exactly.
out of here, Cersei
Yeah.
and Icarus. But no, I thought she was very good. I thought the character was underserved, but in a way that I can kind of understand, because it's pretty difficult to write in a large group setting banter and emotional moments with someone who's using ASL. They have to stop the dialogue to show her doing ASL. They have to show other characters doing ASL to respond to her. All of this makes sense from the way that you structure interaction with a deaf character, but it does mean that she's sort of put in the background for a lot of those conflict moments, because she can't yell with them. She can't join in that, sort of emotional fray because of her disability, though she does keep up with the writing of her character through the subtitles and the ASL does the best that it can.
I think they do a good job of incorporating it, because like you said, the moments where characters will have to respond to her in ASL as well as to the rest of the group, they do that multiple times, and it works every time. It doesn't take you out of the scene at all. There's probably some very dumb people who are like, I don't want to read subtitles in this movie or whatever.
Although they'd be sorely disappointed, because there's a lot of talking in other languages in this film as well.
There are. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, audiences if they have an issue with it, audiences have to get over it for the larger goal of inclusion of actors with disabilities, such as Lauren Ridloff's.
Yes.
And absolutely, I think she's great. She's part of like the team that's off in space now, so we'll be getting more of her in the sequel. Cannot wait. Gonna be good.
Yeah.
Speaking of people who may or may not be in the sequel, Kingo.
Why would he not be in the sequel?
Wait, is he on the ship with them at the end?
No, he's not, but he's still around.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, he's sort of like not. He didn't get like. Wait, did he go back to Earth? Because there's a thing at the end where
they all went back to Earth.
No. Here's the thing. What I'm talking about is the Celestial like swoops him off of Earth at the end of the movie, and he takes Cersei, and Kingo's also there, so he takes him as well.
Oh, right? Did neither of them? Oh, okay. Hold on. Hold on. Yeah, this is something that's sort of unclear in this ending, which I think is a weird sort of note to leave this on. Is Arishem comes back to Earth, and he's like, you guys decided to spare humanity. You made this decision on your own. I'll allow it for now. You gotta prove that humans are worthy of keeping around. But have a fucking heyday. I assumed that he returned Kingo and Cersei, and there was a third person, but I don't remember who it was.
Me neither.
I assumed that he returned them to Earth. I think it was Fastest. I think it was Fastest.
Oh, that would make sense. That would make sense. Yeah.
I assumed that he returned them to Earth.
I don't think
they showed that.
Because when in the post-credit scene, when they're on the domo going through space or whatever, they're like, "It's been weeks. We haven't heard from them. What's going on?" I think he took them somewhere.
I read that dialogue as Athena and Makari and Druig on the domo looking for the other Celestials and saying, we've been searching for weeks and we haven't gotten a response back.
Oh.
Because that's what they're doing. They're out looking for the other Celestials to tell them, hey, the other Eternals to say, hey, let's ignore what Arishem is saying and keep people around. Let shit be. So since there was their goal, I assumed that that's what they were saying. But it is unclear, and I think that's one of the things that's both a little bit underwhelming about the ending of this, but also kind of interesting about the direction that they're taking this, is there is a divide there. And you're right, I guess Kingo and Cersei could be in space or back at the fucking Celestial HQ or whatever. It is unclear.
The Planet Forge or whatever it's called.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool set piece, but it was unclear what it was. I think that they returned to Earth, considering I assume we're going to get more Fastest with his family, and Kingo being a Bollywood star and all these things are very important to their characters. So sending them off wherever, and the fact that they didn't clarify that they were at Celestial HQ or fucking stuck in space or whatever.
Yeah.
I assume that they just went back to Earth.
Okay. Well, we shall see. I'm sure there'll be a clarification in the coming days or weeks from Chloe Zhao if there is large confusion. Maybe I'm just an idiot or whatever.
Yeah.
But regardless, we didn't talk about Kingo at all.
No.
Camille Nanjiani's good. I love him. I like him. Some of the comedy falls flat, but I'd say it's like 80-20 for what works.
Yeah, it's very Kumail Nanjiani comedy, and luckily I really enjoy that. I think he's a hilarious guy. I think he's really charismatic. He's probably the most charismatic person in this whole movie, just because he's got his suaveness to him, and he's got his quippiness.
The introduction to him when he's doing the little Bollywood dance where he's making a Bollywood version of the Icarus about Icarus as a superhero is great, because he's like working the eyebrows and he's popping his biceps out and stuff. It's all great. Yeah. He's got his sidekick guy who's filming like a documentary about that.
Yeah,
they have good chemistry, and he just has good chemistry with all the rest of the cast as well.
He definitely does. I think he's a huge boon to this movie, charisma wise and sort of personality wise. He brings a lot of personality to this, again, because I do think he's one of the more personable human characters, in terms of how he fits into the roles that we're used to seeing of the quippy superhero guy. But he has enough of a spin on that that I really enjoyed his take on it. But I think his valet guy is one of the weirdest inclusions in this movie.
It is weird, isn't it?
We did not need another character. And
he sticks around for so long.
He just sticks around for essentially the entire film. And he's filming it, which is kind of fun, but it's only a couple of times. And he doesn't add enough for me to really feel like he's, an integral part of the film. I do think that it would have... The movie doesn't suffer because he's there, but it was a weird choice that I think if he had been removed, it probably would have felt more natural.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. He doesn't detract from the film.
It's also weird, and this is a story thing with the third act as well. Kingo doesn't show up at the end of the movie.
That's my biggest complaint with this film.
I think backs off. He's like, I'm sure I agree with Icarus, but like I don't want to fight him. I don't want to fight against you guys. I'm staying neutral. I'm backing out. Peace.
Yes.
And then that movie history and tropes have taught us that when that happens, he's going to show up and save the day in the third act.
Oh, I mean, I had to change the part at the end. You guys were right. I need to help you. Bam, bam, bam. Take down the villain.
But
nope. Yeah, that's, again, as I was trying to say, that is what one of my biggest complaints with the film. That and Liam McHugh's performance, I think, are the things that feel most jarring to me, because the film does have a pretty good progression of introducing us to this very large group of characters and getting scenes that introduce each of them. That takes up a large portion of the film, but I think it's got a solid pace to it. But removing him for some sort of bullshit writing into I don't want to fight lol, and then he's just gone, feels really unnatural, and having him be there at the end would have made a lot more sense. And yeah, it's just such a fucking random story choice. I think it was a really bad decision.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Let's quickly talk about Dane Whitman, Kit Harrington. Who is in this for approximately 10 minutes. We get some we get obviously a post-credit scene that is setting him up to become the Black Knight in the next film, or maybe a different film, because a voice comes from off screen saying, "Are you sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitman?" And who is it? We don't know. The theories have been flying over here at the Dykstra Hazel house. Is it? I don't think it's Nick Fury. Did not sound like Samuel L. Jackson.
Sorry, that was my first thought.
Is it Baron Mordo? Is it Jeffrey Wright's The Watcher? Is it it didn't sound like Benedict Wong either, but it could have, maybe it was Wong. Who's to say? But that's the tease.
Very weird that they didn't show it.
Yeah,
because you think that we don't know who it is,
right?
But presumably it's a big enough character that it was a pop just from their voice alone. But we couldn't tell who it was from the voice. I don't know who it is. That clip will drop somewhere. I will listen to it a bunch of times. It will be narrowed down. It will be clear who it was. But regardless, maybe they just couldn't get the actor for a scene and just had him fucking recorded on to Dropbox or whatever to put it in the film. But yeah, why the fuck? I mean, this is Marvel we're talking about. They got fucking Captain Marvel and Hulk for just like essentially Skype Zoom clips for the end of Shang-Chi. They couldn't get Mystery Fellow number 3 to show up for the end of Eternals. What the fuck?
Yeah. While we're at it, should we talk about the other post-credit scene just before we move into our final thoughts on Eternals? Mm-hmm. So yeah, like we've alluded to multiple times, it's Druig, it's Athena, and it's Makari on the Domo, flying through space, looking for the other Eternals. Then, a bright flash of light. Oh, what's going on, Athena?
Kind of looks like the opening of the Netflix logo.
The rainbow thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then a poorly CGI'd little dwarf man comes through, voiced by Patton Oswalt, and that is
Pip the Troll.
Pip the Troll. Thank you, Tucker. Mm-hmm. And he's swinging out of a big tankard. Excuse me.
Hey, you fucking sound like you've been swinging out of a tankard.
Oh boy, I wish. And he says, "Hey, here comes a guy. It's the magnificent Star Fox. Here he is, the brother of Thanos. His Majesty." I'm doing the hiccups like I'm drunk. His Majesty, what is it? Eros.
Yeah.
And who comes through that rainbow door portal thing? None other than the internet's favorite, Harry Styles.
Yeah. I don't have a lot to say about this.
Yeah.
It was rumored, if not all but confirmed, and is now confirmed, that he would be playing Star Fox, which is the most interesting part and exciting part about all this is I think Star Fox is an interesting character in the way that he plays into the greater universe and his abilities of sort of mind control that gets him into trouble a lot and being related to Thanos and all this stuff, and him being our newest Eternal. He is an Eternal. It's all very interesting. I don't care about Harry Styles. I as long as he's good in the role, it doesn't bother me. But it is a meme that we have
Harry Styles in the MCU
as Star Fox. People were laughing their fucking butts off in the theater when they saw that.
Yeah.
And Pip is fine. I like Patton Oswalt. I think he's a good voice actor. I think he'll be funny as that. But holy fuck, that CGI was terrible.
Yeah, it's not very good.
We haven't seen many poorly CGI'd characters in the MCU at all.
No.
I think the next one above that, but still better, is one of those fucking Black Order guys in Infinity War. But still better than this. I think this is probably the worst CGI exclusive character, because I thought it was like supposed to be an animated character. I thought it was like a cartoon character when he popped onto the floor, and then we like cut to Athena, and Athena's like, "What the fuck is going on?" And then it's like, no, it's supposed to be a live action animated character, but it doesn't look good enough to be that. It's really fucking stupid.
Tucker, can you give me a quick rundown of sort of who Star Fox is and his powers and how he plays into the Eternal story, if you know?
No. I know enough in my own brain to think that he's an interesting character, but I couldn't say definitively his story. Do your fucking research. There's fucking Marvel Wikipedia pages about him. You can figure it out.
Tucker, give me your closing thoughts on the Eternals and anything else if you want to bring up while I get a drink of water to satiate my hiccups.
Wash away the tankard that's building up inside of you. The Eternals, I think, as I think about it more and more, I think it was much more good than bad. The things that I do think are bad are jarring. Kingo not being included in the end, Liam McHugh's performance, a lot of the pacing and amount of expository dialogue in that first half is overwhelming, but I think it's unfortunately a symptom of the ambition of this film, introducing so many new characters, introducing so many new ideas, such a large scale and so many time periods and concepts and all this stuff that they really have to hammer home to make that ending and the impact of it make sense. The fact that this is the end of the world and the scope and stakes of that final action sequence are some of the best, stakes that we've seen in the MCU. The imagery of the hand of Tiamat coming out of the water and
looks great, by the way.
It looks fucking awesome. That final shot of the hand coming out and the head poking out of the water, one of the coolest MCU shots in my opinion.
Yeah.
And everything with the Celestials, amazing visually. I think this movie is awesome visually.
Yeah.
It has such a unique visual style with the glyphs and the circles and the way that plays into all their abilities and the gold streams that are like flowing throughout all of their powers and the costumes that are really consistent but unique enough between them and really colorful. I think this movie works in its own way that's really powerful, and I can see it becoming something that they build on in the future. But this movie does feel like setup at the end of the day. It's a lot of expository dialogue. It's a lot of introducing characters. It's a lot of all this stuff that does feel poorly paced in places. But when I think back on this film, I'm going to think of the scale. I'm going to think of the fun characters. I'm going to think of the fact that it's introduced so much, and less about the fact that, yeah, it was a bit bumbly in places. The editing on the whole was, kind of choppy. And I guarantee that I'm going to enjoy this movie more. The more that I learn about it, the more that I rewatch it, the more that I see how it sets up future projects. I think this is a good movie that will only get better.
Sure. Yeah. I think I'm coming off of this review talking about it with you. I'm coming up more positive.
Believe it or not.
Believe it or not, I've been talking to Tucker this whole time. I'm coming off more positive than I went into it. I think the cast works by and large. I think the characters are mostly interesting if they dropped some of the most interesting possible things.
We didn't talk about Ajax.
Oh yeah. Salma Hayek is hardly in it. She dies. She's revealed to be dead 20 minutes in. Yeah. And that's that.
She's totally fine. I think it's a good thing for her to have a different kind of role. She's good in the role. But
she got her paycheck.
But the fact that she was not included, actually, I do think it's kind of a good thing for this film, is chopping out essentially a tenth of the characters to, like, for most of its runtime, to focus more on the main cast, which is kind of crazy to say. But this film's cons, I think, are also its pros, and it's a balancing act that I think works in the end because of how ambitious it is.
I think the editing thing isn't something I got to talk about a lot, but just quickly, I think you can reshuffle this film to make it slightly more chronological, because there is a moment where you're like, oh shit, Ajax is dead, she was the leader of the Eternals, what now? And then we jump into a 25-minute flashback sequence that completely stops all the action and is only meant to let us get to know the characters a little more.
Yeah.
Which, why wasn't that at the beginning of the film?
Make
sequence
it chronological. Is fine. I have nothing against that sequence as I'm watching it. I think that it's a good way to sort of set up the history of these characters a little more. And also those Babylon sets and Ajax communing with the Celestials all looks great. But it is a strangely a strange placement of that sequence. I think a lot of those past sequences work as quick flashbacks with the montage sort of stuff. But you're right. I mean, it's intended to be like, oh, they miss Ajax because she was really important. Here's why Ajax was important. Why couldn't we be like, oh, Ajax was important, this is why they miss Ajax, she's important.
But ultimately, that flashback serves to be more of a Cersei Icarus like character building moment than anything else. It's team building a little bit, but like I said, just tell the story basically chronologically, and a lot of the editing issues would sort of smooth themselves out.
Yeah,
that's my big issue with the editing. But like I said, characters mostly work, cast mostly works. Tucker's yawning at me sharing my opinion.
It's almost midnight, bro.
The editing, I think it can be reshuffled to work a little better. Oh, we didn't talk about Crow at all.
No, we didn't, because he's fucking unimportant.
Crow is the most useless villain I've ever seen in a Marvel movie. His entire motivation is already covered by the Eternals themselves. He's like, I need to stop the emergence happening. And I'm like, the Eternals already want to do that. And he's like, I'm going to kill the Eternals. And I'm like, Icarus is probably going to fight against them anyway.
Yeah.
So why are you here?
Legitimately, I thought that he was going to team up with the Eternals team against Icarus at the end. I thought that when he showed up, they were going to be like, well, no, wait, hold on. We kind of have the same goal here. Stop Icarus so we can stop the emergence, so both the Deviants and Eternals can continue to exist, and humanity. And then
Nope.
he's in the cave, and then he almost steals Athena powers, but then she chops his head off.
She slices them into little bits, which was cool. That was a cool moment.
Yeah,
Uh
but he's fucking useless. He's fucking useless.
oh yeah,
Which, by
absolutely.
the way, I want to say he's fucking useless. And at that point, just don't include the character
Yeah.
because he is in the movie so little that it's not a huge
Oh
detriment
yeah.
to the film.
I
But
remember turning to the people who went to the movie with us when he walks out of the ocean. I'm like, oh yeah, there's like another villain in this.
yeah, no, but what I'm saying is, it's not a detriment to the film because he's in it so little.
hmm
Um, and I think that works because Icarus is the more interesting of the antagonists in this film. But just
But it
don't
is
include the fucking
it,
guy. Like,
it shows a bit of sloppy filmmaking to have this completely arbitrary character
yeah,
being included and taking up while a minuscule amount of screen time nonetheless.
yes.
But I keep getting interrupted and trying to doing my final thoughts. Um, it's flawed, yes. People are probably gonna shit on it more than it deserves.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, do whatever you want. Yeah, the flaws are there nonetheless. Um, I'll probably do a fair bit of defending it, but at the end of the day, it's gonna make a ton of money. They're gonna make Eternals 2. It's probably in the works already, and I'm excited. I like these characters. I like the bit of a different feel it has. I like the aspect of the MCU that it's building. Yeah, Eternals. I'm gonna say it, Tucker, is a good-ish movie. That's my hard and fast opinion. It's kind of a good movie.
I think it's good. I think reflecting on it through our conversation here, I realized that a lot of my problems were in the moment, and in retrospect, I'm like, whatever. I mean, I'm more happy that the MCU is trying something
Yeah,
different. Um,
absolutely.
we had some people in our theater, not naming any names, when we were leaving, saying that this was the most MCU movie, and what the fuck are you smoking? Because this was the least like the rest of the MCU that, in my opinion,
hmm
visually much more interesting, a lot more diverse cast and concepts, almost entirely separated from the pre-established lore of the MCU, and a lot less comedy.
Yeah,
The comedy is
sparse-ish.
it's more much more sparse than other Marvel movies, and I
hmm
think because of that, it kind of feels a little bit out of place when it does happen. But I think that's because the movie is strongest when it's not doing the comedic tone, which let me check my watch. The rest of the MCU has done for 25 films now, so I'm glad that they're trying something different.
yeah.
And Chloe Zhao is very passionate about this. I
Yes.
do think, regardless of the quality of this as a superhero film, I think it's a higher quality it's a higher quality film because she's making it. But regardless, she's passionate about it, and I appreciate that. I mentioned
Sure. It doesn't seem like she's phoning this in.
no,
Is what it is. I wish it had. I wish it had more character moments, but this film had to do a lot of exposition.
yeah, not enough
Uh,
characters in this film.
Not enough character. More character moments is what I
Yeah, no,
want.
I
A
know.
little camaraderie. A little camaraderie like we have here on Backlog Banter, Tucker. Thank you for watching this somewhat, disorganized review. We're a little all over the shop, just like the movie Eternals is. But if you want to let us know your thoughts on the movie Eternals, let us know down in the comments. Join the Discord. Message us in there your thoughts. If we are singing the praises of it, let us know. If we're idiots, also let us know. We will respond accordingly. But regardless, thank you for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.